A millionaire, tired of fake love, gave 4 women unlimited credit cards for 24 hours. 3 of them spent everything on diamonds, luxury bags, and fancy dinners. But what the maid did with her card shocked him so much it changed his life forever. Was it money or true love? Stay with me because this story will move your heart. The city skyline glittered outside the penthouse windows, but for Jonathan Hale, the view felt empty. He was one of the richest men in the country, yet his heart carried a hollowness wealth could not fill. Endless business meetings and glamorous events left him drained, not fulfilled. He longed for companionship, yet every relationship ended the same way. Behind smiles and sweet words, he always found greed waiting. He remembered countless dinners where women's eyes sparkled, not with affection, but with the promise of luxury. Lavish gifts were expected, and genuine conversation was rare. Jonathan had grown tired of being seen as a bank account rather than a man. His fortune, once a symbol of success, had become a prison that trapped him in superficiality. At night, he wandered through the vast halls of his mansion, its silence louder than any noise. The marble floors echoed with loneliness. He had more cars than he could drive, more suits than he could wear, yet no one to share a morning coffee with. He envied the simple laughter of families he sometimes watched at the park from his limousine window. Jonathan's staff respected him, but respect was not the same as love. He noticed how strangers treated him with excessive politeness, always calculating what they could gain. It made him suspicious of every compliment, every kind gesture. He wondered if anyone could ever see him, not his billions. It was during one of these restless nights that a dangerous idea formed. What if he could test the sincerity of those around him? He needed a way to separate those blinded by money from someone who might value character. A bold experiment began to take shape in his mind. He thought of 4 women in his life, 3 admirers who often sought his attention, and 1 quiet soul who never asked for anything, his housekeeper Maria. Each had a place in his world, but only through a trial would he uncover their true selves. His wealth would become both bait and truth serum. The plan was as simple as it was risky. He would hand each woman a credit card with no limits, instructing them to use it freely for 24 hours. Then he would wait, watch, and measure their choices. The thought excited him, but also filled him with dread. Would he confirm his deepest fears or discover a miracle? Jonathan prepared 4 sleek black cards, symbols of ultimate temptation. He ran his fingers over their polished surfaces, imagining the possible outcomes. Greed was predictable, but was there a chance for something different? He hoped so, though experience had made him cynical. He rehearsed the speech he would give, imagining their surprised reactions. He would present the offer with a smile, hiding the true purpose of his test. To them it would look like generosity. To him it was survival, a last attempt to find authenticity in a world painted by gold. By the time dawn broke, Jonathan knew what he had to do. The decision was set. The cards were ready. The stage for his experiment was prepared, and soon the truth about the women around him would be revealed. If you believe that love should never be measured by money, join me on this journey. Subscribe now, and let's uncover together what truly matters in life. The following afternoon, Jonathan invited the 4 women to his penthouse. The spacious living room shimmered with sunlight bouncing off crystal chandeliers. He poured them each a glass of champagne, masking the tension in his chest with practiced charm. To them, it was just another indulgent meeting with a wealthy man. To him, it was the beginning of a revelation. The 3 women who often pursued him, Sophie, glamorous and sharp-tongued, Isabel, elegant and ambitious, and Claire, sweet but calculating, were radiant with anticipation. Each dressed in designer clothes, their eyes scanned the room, searching for the next luxury. Only Maria, the housekeeper, stood quietly near the corner, unsure why she had been called. Jonathan cleared his throat, his voice calm yet commanding. "Today I want to give each of you something special," he said, holding out the black cards. "These cards have no limit. For the next 24 hours you may use them however you please. Buy what you desire. Live without restraint." The room froze, then erupted with gasps of excitement. Sophie's jaw dropped, Isabel's eyes gleamed like diamonds, and Claire covered her mouth with a gasp of disbelief. They could hardly contain their joy. Their minds raced with visions of boutiques, jewelry, and lavish feasts. The atmosphere pulsed with greed disguised as gratitude. Maria, however, stepped forward hesitantly, her brows furrowed. "Sir, surely this is a mistake," she murmured. "I have no need for such a gift. I clean your home, not your conscience." Her words pierced Jonathan unexpectedly, though he urged her to take it anyway. "No mistake," he assured. "Use it however you choose." Though reluctant, Maria accepted the card, slipping it into her apron pocket without ceremony. Unlike the others, she did not squeal or rush to plan her spree. Her silence unsettled Jonathan as much as it intrigued him. He wondered if her humility was real, or a clever mask. The women toasted to their good fortune, already discussing which shops to raid first. Sophie spoke of diamond necklaces, Isabel of designer gowns, and Claire of luxury spa retreats. Their laughter filled the room like champagne bubbles, light, dazzling, but ultimately empty. Maria excused herself quietly, declining the celebratory chatter. "I should return to work," she said softly. Her departure left Jonathan with a curious ache, as though the room had lost its anchor of authenticity. The three others barely noticed, too consumed by fantasies of excess. When the women finally left to begin their shopping spree, Jonathan leaned against the balcony, staring at the city below. The test had begun, and the clock was ticking. By this time tomorrow, he would know whether money was truly all that defined the hearts around him. The sun dipped into the horizon, casting long shadows across his penthouse. Jonathan felt both excitement and dread. His wealth was once again on the line, but this time, so was his hope of finding truth. The three women wasted no time once they left the penthouse. Sophie, Isabel, and Claire hurried into a chauffeured car, their laughter echoing as they mapped out their extravagant day. They listed the most exclusive boutiques, jewelry stores, and restaurants in the city. For them, the black cards were golden tickets, and they intended to use every second of freedom to indulge. Sophie insisted on starting with diamonds, claiming nothing sparkled brighter than her. Isabel disagreed, arguing that true power came from couture gowns designed in Paris. Claire, trying to outshine the others, promised herself a spa package complete with private massages and champagne baths. Each woman saw this as her chance to impress Jonathan with beauty polished by wealth. Meanwhile, Maria left quietly, walking to a modest bus stop with the card still tucked inside her pocket. She looked at it with unease, unsure why fate had placed such a responsibility in her hands. Unlike the others, she felt no desire for glittering jewelry or designer bags. Her thoughts turned instead to the elderly neighbor who struggled to buy medicine and to the orphanage down the street that often ran out of food. While the other women indulged in fantasies, Maria's mind wrestled with a choice. She could use the card for herself, securing luxuries she had never known, or she could use it to bring relief to those who truly suffered. Her heart leaned toward the second option, though she doubted Jonathan ever expected her to think this way. She walked toward the market with a quiet resolve. The contrast between their paths had already begun. In sleek cars, the three women raced toward indulgence. On foot, Maria headed to a small grocery store, ready to fill her cart with bread, rice, and milk. One group sought to dazzle Jonathan with excess, while the other prepared to surprise him with humility and kindness. The test was revealing its first answers. Sophie entered the most prestigious jewelry store in town, her eyes wide with hunger. She tried on necklace after necklace, delighting in the reflection of gold and diamonds across her skin. Isabel moved swiftly to the designer district, purchasing gowns worth more than most people earned in a year. Claire lounged in a luxurious spa, sipping champagne while attendants massaged her shoulders. The three women felt like queens for a day. Their laughter echoed through marble halls and velvet rooms. To them, it wasn't just about spending, it was about showing off. They posed for photos, preparing to boast about their purchases later. Each believed that Jonathan would admire their elegance, not realizing their extravagance was revealing their true nature. Greed was cloaked as glamour, but its shine was shallow. Meanwhile, Maria walked through aisles of the local market, choosing basic goods with careful thought. She picked up rice, beans, milk, and fruit, her cart filling with simplicity. Children from the neighborhood ran to greet her, curious about the abundance of food. Maria smiled gently, already planning which families would receive each bag she carried. Her hands were busy, but her heart was light. After the market, she stopped by the pharmacy. With trembling hands, she purchased medicine for her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, who had gone without treatment for weeks. Maria delivered the bag to her doorstep, refusing payment or thanks. The card was powerful, but to her, it was only a tool to bring comfort where it was needed. She returned home with nothing for herself. As the sun set, the contrast between them grew sharper. The three women were drunk with extravagance, believing they had proven their worth through luxury. Maria, however, sat at her small kitchen table, sipping tea after delivering food to families and medicine to the sick. The same card that fed vanity for some had become a blessing for many through her hands. By midnight, Sophie's closet overflowed with sparkling jewels, Isabel's wardrobe with designer gowns, and Claire's body glowed from indulgent spa treatments. Each woman felt triumphant, certain Jonathan would be impressed. They rehearsed their stories, eager to prove they were the most refined and deserving. None suspected that their greed was writing their downfall. Their hearts beat for wealth, not for him. Maria, on the other hand, returned home with only a few simple groceries for herself. Most of what she purchased had already been delivered to families in need. The smiles of children and grateful tears of their parents were the only rewards she accepted. She felt tired but fulfilled, resting with peace in her modest room. She hadn't thought of impressing Jonathan once. She reflected on the strange gift she had received that morning. Why me? She wondered, staring at the black card now lying unused on her table. To Maria, wealth was not temptation, but responsibility. She whispered a prayer that Jonathan might never know the extent of what she had done. Her actions were meant for others, not for recognition or praise. As the night grew quiet, Maria thought of the contrast she had seen. Luxury was fleeting, but kindness lasted. A necklace might sparkle for a season, but food and medicine could save lives. She felt no envy towards Sophie, Isabel, or Claire. Instead, she pitied them for believing love could be purchased with glamour. To her, love was something far simpler. The choice had been made, and it was clear where her heart lay. Tomorrow would bring Jonathan's judgment, but Maria had no fear. She had not acted for him or for his approval. She had acted for the families who slept with full stomachs and neighbors who no longer suffered. Her heart, unlike the others, remained uncorrupted by gold. The next afternoon, the four women returned to Jonathan's penthouse. The air was thick with perfume and tension as Sophie, Isabel, and Claire paraded in with dozens of bags. They laughed loudly, boasting about their extravagant purchases. Diamonds glittered on their necks, silk gowns flowed around them, and their arms dripped with expensive handbags. Their confidence was undeniable. Jonathan observed them quietly, masking his disappointment behind a calm smile. Each woman tried to outshine the others, presenting her purchases as proof of taste and loyalty. They believed wealth equaled devotion, not realizing they were confirming his greatest fears. He offered polite nods, though his eyes carried a shadow of doubt. They noticed nothing, too absorbed in vanity. When Maria entered, she carried no bags, only a small envelope. The other women laughed mockingly, whispering that she must have failed the test. But Jonathan's gaze sharpened as he saw her humble composure. She stepped forward, placing the envelope on the table. Inside was a simple receipt from the market and pharmacy, totaling a fraction of what the card allowed. "I used the card," Maria said softly, "but not for myself. The families nearby needed food, and Mrs. Alvarez needed her medicine. I only bought what was necessary." Her voice was calm, without pride or apology. For her, it was not a performance, but the truth. Jonathan felt his heart stir with something unfamiliar hope. The room grew silent. Sophie, Isabel, and Claire sneered, dismissing Maria's choices as foolish, but Jonathan could not look away from her. For the first time, he saw a glimmer of authenticity, a light untouched by greed. His experiment had revealed more than he expected. One card had bought diamonds, another gowns, another comfort, but Maria had purchased dignity, compassion, and truth. Jonathan poured himself a glass of wine that evening, replaying the day's events in his mind. The contrast between the three women and Maria could not have been sharper. Yet doubt gnawed at him. Was Maria truly selfless, or had she simply played a clever role to win his favor? His wealth had made him distrustful, and trust did not come easily anymore. He remembered countless times when generosity masked hidden intentions. Could Maria be different? Her quiet demeanor and reluctance to use the card suggested sincerity, but his mind whispered warnings. A man surrounded by opportunists learned to question even kindness. He paced his study, torn between admiration and fear. His experiment had opened new doors, but not yet closed old wounds. Meanwhile, the three women plotted their next moves. They felt threatened by Maria's unexpected restraint. In their eyes, she was not humble but manipulative, pretending to be virtuous to capture Jonathan's heart. They whispered conspiracies, each eager to paint her as deceitful. Their jealousy burned hotter than their diamonds, feeding a storm that would soon fall upon Maria. Maria, unaware of their schemes, went about her duties as usual. She scrubbed the floors, tended to the flowers, and prepared meals, never once boasting of what she had done with the card. Her silence spoke louder than any defense she might have offered. To her, service was its own reward. She did not seek recognition. She sought peace. That night, Jonathan stood at his window, gazing over the glittering city. For the first time in years, he wondered if love might still be possible. But the question haunted him. Was Maria's kindness genuine or another mask? The seeds of suspicion had been planted, and soon he would be forced to discover the truth. Determined to uncover Maria's true nature, Jonathan began observing her more closely. He instructed his driver to follow her discreetly when she left the mansion. At first, he felt guilty for spying, but his fear of betrayal was stronger. He needed proof, one way or another. Only then could he decide whether her actions were sincere or calculated. The driver reported that Maria's errands were remarkably ordinary. She shopped at modest stores, visited her elderly neighbor, and spent time at the orphanage delivering food. No signs of indulgence, no hidden luxuries. Jonathan was struck by her consistency. She lived with simplicity, her kindness extending far beyond the day of his test. It was not a performance, it was her way of life. Curiosity drove him to follow her himself one Saturday. Dressed in plain clothes, he kept a distance as Maria walked through crowded streets. She greeted children warmly, offered coins to a beggar, and laughed with a street vendor as if they were old friends. Jonathan felt invisible, yet strangely connected. For once, he saw the world through her eyes, not through glass windows of limousines. The experience stirred something within him, a mixture of shame and admiration. He had spent years surrounded by people who measured worth in wealth, yet Maria lived richly without riches. Her actions were not grand gestures, but quiet consistencies. He realized how little he understood about the true value of generosity. Watching her was like discovering a rare treasure hidden in plain sight. That night, Jonathan sat alone in his study, torn between revelation and hesitation. Could he finally allow himself to trust someone? The evidence pointed to Maria's sincerity, yet his scars urged caution. He knew the next steps would define not only his test, but his future. For the first time, he felt the fragile possibility of hope taking root. The three women gathered in Isabel's penthouse, frustration written across their faces. Maria's quiet choices had unsettled them more than Jonathan's wealth ever could. They feared she was gaining an advantage they could not buy. "She's playing the saint," Sophie hissed, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Jonathan will fall for it if we don't act." They devised a plan to ruin Maria's reputation. Isabel suggested spreading rumors that Maria secretly kept gifts for herself. Claire proposed fabricating receipts that made her look like a thief. Their scheme grew darker as jealousy twisted into malice. Each woman agreed. Maria must be destroyed, no matter the cost. To them, love was a competition, and they were losing. The following days, Jonathan began hearing whispers from unexpected sources. A staff member nervously mentioned suspicions about Maria. Anonymous notes appeared, claiming she had hidden luxuries in her room. The accusations seemed out of character, yet Jonathan's old doubts resurfaced. The shadows of betrayal that haunted him made every lie sting with possibility. Maria noticed the change in atmosphere. Colleagues who once smiled at her now looked with unease. She was puzzled, but remained silent, refusing to defend herself with anger. Instead, she continued her daily tasks with the same devotion. Her patience was her shield, though the weight of false suspicion pressed heavily upon her. Jonathan wrestled with conflicting emotions. His heart leaned toward believing Maria, yet the evidence, though fabricated, planted thorns of uncertainty. He knew he needed clarity, but the truth seemed buried beneath lies. The conspiracy was working, and Maria's quiet virtue hung by a fragile thread. Unable to bear the doubt, Jonathan decided to investigate personally. He asked his most trusted aide to examine the claims about Maria. The search of her room revealed nothing but modest belongings, a few dresses, a Bible, and photos of her family. No jewelry, no designer shoes, no hidden treasures. The lies began to crumble under the weight of truth. Still uneasy, Jonathan visited the orphanage Maria often supported. There he was welcomed with open arms by children who recognized Maria instantly. "She brings us food every week," one little girl said, tugging his sleeve. An older volunteer confirmed Maria had been donating quietly for years, long before the test. The realization struck Jonathan like lightning. Her kindness was not for show. Walking back to his car, Jonathan's chest tightened with shame. He had doubted the only person who had shown him genuine compassion. For too long, he had allowed money to blind him, poisoning his ability to trust. In Maria, he saw not a servant, but a woman of rare integrity. His heart began to soften in ways he had almost forgotten. When he returned home, Maria was scrubbing the kitchen floor. She looked up, surprised to see him watching. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Jonathan knelt, taking her hands gently. "Forgive me," he whispered. "I doubted you when you gave me no reason to. You are the truest person I know." Maria's eyes filled with quiet tears, though she said nothing. The conspiracy collapsed as Jonathan dismissed the false rumors. Sophie, Isabel, and Claire's lies were exposed, their desperation laid bare. Yet Jonathan no longer cared for their schemes. His heart had found a new compass, one that pointed firmly toward Maria. The truth was undeniable. She was the only one who had passed his test. Jonathan sat in his study that night, the firelight flickering against the polished wood. The truth about Maria had changed something deep inside him. For years he had believed love and loyalty were illusions, but her quiet actions proved otherwise. The orphanage children's gratitude, her modest lifestyle, and her refusal to seek attention had shattered his doubts. For the first time in years, hope felt real. He thought of Sophie, Isabel, and Claire, whose glittering greed now seemed almost childish. Their laughter and elegance had once captivated him, but now it felt empty, like hollow ornaments. Maria's humility, by contrast, carried more weight than diamonds. He realized that what he had been searching for all along wasn't beauty or luxury, it was truth. And truth had been right under his roof. The turning point was not just about love, but about himself. Jonathan realized how much his fear had dictated his life. Suspicion had built walls around him, keeping him from trust and connection, but Maria had walked through those walls without even trying, armed only with sincerity. He wondered if perhaps she had saved him from himself. In the quiet of that night, he resolved to change. His wealth would no longer be a shield of suspicion, but a tool for purpose. Maria had shown him that money could serve others, not just enslave him in superficiality. He made a silent promise to honor her example no matter what challenges lay ahead. For the first time in years, Jonathan slept peacefully. His heart, once heavy with loneliness, felt lighter. Tomorrow, he knew, would bring confrontation with the three women, but he was ready. Their masks had already fallen. The only question left was whether Maria would accept a place in his life beyond service. The next evening, Jonathan summoned Sophie, Isabel, and Claire to his penthouse. They arrived dressed in their finest, confident they could still sway him with charm. But Jonathan's demeanor was different, calmer, sharper, and colder. He offered no champagne, no polite smiles. Instead, he faced them with the steady eyes of a man who finally saw the truth. He laid their receipts on the table, the evidence of their greed displayed like trophies of betrayal. You thought you could buy my affection with my own money, he said firmly, but all you bought was your own downfall. The women tried to protest, claiming elegance and refinement were signs of devotion, yet their excuses rang hollow in the silence of his judgment. Sophie sneered, Isabel wept, and Claire begged, but Jonathan's decision was final. You have mistaken greed for love, he declared, and I am done with illusions. His words cut deeper than any insult. For years, they had seen him as a prize to win, but in that moment he stripped them of power. They left one by one, humiliated and defeated. Maria entered the room only after they were gone, carrying a tray of tea as if nothing had happened. Jonathan watched her quietly, marveling at how differently she carried herself compared to the others. No diamonds, no gowns, no drama, just grace in simplicity. He realized the contrast could not be greater, nor more decisive. As Maria placed the tray on the table, Jonathan spoke softly, his tone stripped of pride. Maria, you are the only one who showed me truth. Without even trying, you have changed me. I cannot ignore it anymore. His words hung in the air, heavy with sincerity. For the first time, Jonathan was not the powerful millionaire, but a man vulnerable before the only woman who mattered. Jonathan's heart pounded as he led Maria into his study, a room once filled with contracts and numbers, but now destined for something far greater. He gestured for her to sit, though she hesitated, unused to such formality. Maria, he began, his voice softer than she had ever heard. I want to offer you something beyond money, beyond this house, beyond your duties. She looked at him curiously, unsure of what he meant. He explained his vision, a foundation dedicated to helping orphans, the elderly, and struggling families. You showed me how wealth can serve, not control, he said earnestly. But I don't want to do this alone. I need someone with a heart like yours. Will you stand beside me not just as my partner in this mission, but as my partner in life? His words trembled with sincerity. Maria froze, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had never dreamed of such a proposal, least of all from the man she worked for. Her instinct was to decline, fearing their worlds were too far apart. Sir, I am only your servant, she whispered. You deserve someone who belongs in your world. But Jonathan shook his head, his gaze unwavering. You are wrong, he said firmly. The world I built was empty. What you bring cannot be bought, cannot be learned. It is love, it is kindness, it is truth. Without you, everything I own means nothing. His voice broke, exposing vulnerability he had hidden for years. Maria's heart softened, though fear still lingered. She wondered if she could ever truly belong at his side. For a long moment, silence filled the study. Then Jonathan reached across the table, taking her hands gently. Maria, I don't need another business partner. I need someone to remind me of what matters, that someone is you. Tears welled in her eyes as the weight of his words settled. The seed of love had been planted, though uncertainty still clouded her heart. That night, Jonathan couldn't sleep. Though he had bared his soul, Maria had not yet answered. Fear clawed at him, reminding him of every rejection, every betrayal from the past. He worried she would walk away, believing herself unworthy of his world. The thought of losing her now was unbearable. For the first time, the man who had everything feared losing the one thing that truly mattered. Maria too lay awake in her modest room. She replayed his words over and over, her heart torn between affection and doubt. Could she love a man whose world was built on power and wealth when she came from simplicity and sacrifice? She worried others would mock their bond, accusing her of chasing fortune. The thought pained her, even though her love was pure. The next morning, Jonathan approached her with hesitation. He had always been confident in business, decisive in negotiations, but now he felt like a boy awaiting judgment. Maria, he said gently, I don't expect an answer right away. I only ask that you think of what we could build together, not in wealth, but in love and purpose. His voice trembled with both hope and fear. Maria looked into his eyes, searching for deception, but found only truth. She realized his offer was not born of pity or desire, but of respect and admiration. Still, her heart trembled. I'm afraid, she admitted softly. Afraid of being judged, of not belonging. Afraid of losing the peace I have in the life I know. Her honesty pierced him more deeply than rejection. Jonathan took her hand gently. I am afraid too, he confessed, but perhaps the bravest love is not the one free of fear, it is the one that faces it together. His words lingered in the quiet air, fragile yet powerful. For the first time, Maria allowed herself to imagine a future by his side, though her final answer remained unspoken. The morning sun bathed the mansion in golden light, as if the world itself sensed change was near. Maria entered Jonathan's study, her steps hesitant but her heart steady. He rose from his chair, bracing himself for her decision. For a moment, silence hung between them, filled with unspoken fears. Then, with a trembling smile, Maria whispered, "Yes, I will stand beside you." Jonathan's breath caught as relief washed over him. For the first time, the walls around his heart crumbled completely. He embraced her, not as a servant, not as a benefactor, but as an equal. In that moment, the emptiness of wealth was replaced by the fullness of love. He knew his life had found a new foundation, one not built on marble or gold, but on truth. Together, they began transforming his wealth into something greater. The orphanage that once struggled now thrived, its halls filled with laughter and opportunity. Elderly neighbors received the care they had long been denied. Families across the city felt the ripple of their generosity. Jonathan's name, once associated only with luxury, now carried the weight of compassion and legacy. The world watched with curiosity, some with admiration, others with envy. Yet Jonathan and Maria remained unmoved by opinions. Their bond grew not from appearances, but from shared purpose. Love became their compass, guiding them through challenges and triumphs alike. In each act of service, they found a reflection of the choice that had united them. As the years passed, Jonathan often looked back on the day he handed out those 4 cards. He realized that wealth had never been the true test character had. The other women had revealed vanity, but Maria had revealed love. Smiling, he would say to her, "Money can buy comfort, Maria, but it will never buy a heart like yours." And she would answer with the truth he had always needed, because love is the only treasure that cannot be sold. In the end, the millionaire learned a powerful lesson. Money can buy comfort, but it can never buy a sincere heart. True love is found in kindness, not luxury. And now I want to hear from you. What would you have done with that unlimited card? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss more inspiring stories. This story reminds us that true wealth is found in kindness and love. What about you? What would you have done with that unlimited card? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so we can keep bringing you more stories that touch the heart.